Do you suffer from chronic fatigue? And if you do, I'm sure that I don't have to tell you what a debilitating condition it is to have. It's completely life-altering. And what's even more frustrating is that this condition is not even really recognized by the medical industry as an actual ailment. So join me here today where we will be talking about psychological stress that can actually make you more vulnerable to developing chronic fatigue. And we will also be looking at certain aspects from our environmental stress that can contribute to this ailment from surfacing. Hi, my name is Evette Rose, author and founder of Metaphysical Anatomy, which is a book of 679 medical ailments and also the hidden emotional messages behind them that we all share universally. And welcome to today's topic, which is the psychological root causes of chronic fatigue syndrome. Now, this syndrome in the past has sadly been pushed aside as almost like just a pure psychological problem and burnout. However, thanks to our wonderful scientists who has done endless research on this topic, they have found many plausible reasons behind this condition. Let's start with the definition of what chronic fatigue syndrome is for those of you who are new to this. Now, this is a condition, for example, here that is labeled with it's really complex to understand, as it could actually also have many different underlying causes, which could make targeting the root cause even more challenging. Now, also as a result of treating it successfully, even harder. So, people who are challenged with this condition, they experience extreme fatigue that are not improved, for example, in this specific case, by bed rest. And it can actually get worse even after physical activity and also completing like tasks that was really mentally challenging and also very draining. Now, this is also a significant impairment of short-term memory for these people who are challenged with CFS, and also concentration. They suffer from muscle pain and also joint pain, however, without the swelling. Now, there's also patterns of headaches and tender lymph nodes and also a recurring sore throat. Now, what's interesting is that when you just look at these symptoms alone, they are already showing strong signs of a virus infection. Now, research here also points to infections such as immune disorders and stress and trauma and toxins also being possible culprits of the rise of chronic fatigue syndrome. Now, I'm personally a very strong believer that chronic fatigue syndrome could also be triggered by trauma, and I will explain that in just a minute. So now referring back to the symptoms, the most possible starting point of the stress could also be as a result of a viral infection, but combined with stress, which can lead to chronic fatigue syndrome. Now, what researchers have found is that there's a strong pattern of disturbance in the autonomic nervous system regulation of blood pressure and pulse in people suffering from CFS. Now, this is a dead giveaway that someone is suffering some form of CFS, and these symptoms actually shows that a fight or flight state is highly active because this is a stress response that never really fully reset itself, which it should after a stressful event took place. However, in the case for people with CFS, this cycle doesn't necessarily reset as it should. So, it depletes the body and it causes the immune system to always be in overdrive, depleting the body's main protection center, which is also responsible for protecting a person from ailments and viruses and parasites and bacteria, which then can all cause an entirely different infection as well in the body if it's contracted, which could then be called a secondary ailment. Now, which in this case will just make the diagnosis on the secondary ailment, which of course gives an inaccurate reading. Because the secondary ailment here, the secondary reaction, is normally more prominent in the chronic fatigue because the chronic fatigue syndrome symptoms are a little bit slower to start to reveal themselves. So you end up with an inaccurate prognosis of the issue at hand here. So Unfortunately, that is what also causes CFS to completely be overlooked, and instead, the person's misdiagnosed. So you see, in order for the body to, for example, now be vulnerable to viruses and to parasites and bacteria or fungi, the immune system needs to be vulnerable as well. And what depletes the immune system? Trauma, right? In my research, I also teach that trauma can be a result of long-term low-level stress that starts to build up in the body. And the mind programs itself with the negative thoughts as a result of the stress. Now, side note, right? This is just also your rational mind trying to make sense of how you feel. So what your body's doing is trying to cope and to process your emotions. However, now it turns into negative, destructive thoughts because no plausible solution is found for the negative memories that remains as a result of a past trauma. So, end of side note. So, in this case now, then the physical body also reach its coping threshold and also its capacity to manage and to deal with the stress. So you see now how this cycle can take a massive mental and physical toll, right? It takes a tremendously big toll in you if this cycle starts to loop without a successful reset, meaning without the body having a full capacity to discharge of the nervous energy. So when you are in a state of distress, the amygdala, also what I would call the panic button, right? The amygdala reacts to stimuli in your environment that can now also trigger the stress responses. And this happens when your RAS, which is your reticular activating system, it takes, for example, what you focus on and it creates a filter for that. Right? So if you focus on possible threats, for example, or challenges or danger, then that is what you will start to focus on more, as your RAS will be set to filter in more of that. Example, have you noticed that when you are in pain, then it's basically all that you see in your life, reinforcing the feelings of pain within you. But when you're happy, life looks great, everything looks grand, right? Suddenly you see and you have awareness of positive things around you. So in the case of CFS, the fight or flight system is always on alert, which means that the RAS is set on always looking out for threats or for danger. And also the reason why you have that trauma now is also because the trauma is locked in, which means that, for example, a traumatic or stressful moments in your past, for example, now that also could have caused you so much stress. Now that the body is too overwhelmed to deal with the stress, and this stress has now become locked into the body's cellular memory. And this is what I would call the emotional body as well. Because the body is always subconsciously now, for example, expecting either, say, a physical threat or a verbal threat at any given moment when your RAS filters in on something from your environment. So it depends on what the trauma is that the body hasn't completed. That is aspects of that. What I'm trying to say is what it can start to focus on. So what happens is that in your environment, your RAS will look for things that match how you feel consciously or subconsciously. And then the stress response is re-triggered again when the filter meets and finds something to validate what you're actually looking for consciously or subconsciously. So do you always feel, for example, hypervigilant? If that sounds familiar. So that's the reason why your RAS is always on the lookout for something that could either be a threat or could either be a danger. It's because of a subconscious, unresolved trauma or negative, stressful memory from your past. So here, your RAS is now set on feeding in that information from your environment that, as I said earlier, it could pose as a threat. And everything else that could actually be positive is filtered out, because your RAS is not set on it. It's not looking for that specifically. So now your panic button, the amygdala, sends the stress signals to your hypothalamus, which is also the control center for the body. And now it activates the autonomic nervous system. And there you have the fight or flight state triggered. Now here, keep in mind that when you experience stress, your stress hormone cycle is also triggered as well, releasing cortisol in the body. And this stress cycle takes at least 20 minutes to start to calm down and to also switch off and to reset itself. Now, in most cases, if you are already hypervigilant and you're sensitive to stress in your environment because of, say, built-up stress over time, or it can be because of a traumatic event, then chances are that this stress cycle never really fully resets, which leaves the body in a state of what I would call silent stress, right? And this silent stress is depleting the physical body, and it's also depleting its physical resources to the point where your body starts to pull resources and energy from other parts of your body and organs, weakening the functioning of these organs and other parts of the body, causing more secondary symptoms and ailments. Because if these parts and other organs of your body is depleted, then they're not going to be functioning as well as they should. And they could also now become more vulnerable to any type of ailment that could be triggered in them. And as you now can see, just based on this explanation alone, why it can be so challenging to diagnose chronic fatigue syndrome. Because it can really be quite a big mix of different aspects, triggers, causes, psychological, and also environmental, viral, bacterial, fungi. All these aspects can come into play. It's not caused by one singular event or infection. So now you might ask, which parts of the body could suffer as a result? Which is a good question. Now, it depends on the emotional stress that you're feeling. Because here is the key. Emotions have a direct relationship with certain parts of the body. And that is what Metaphysical Anatomy book, Volume 1, is all about. This book, with laser accuracy, you can target certain areas and understand the hidden psychological stress that's being held there, that's adding to aspects of your body being depleted, meaning because of the emotional stress. But sometimes we are so oblivious to how we really feel because we're masters at numbing ourselves that we completely miss vital and important messages as to why we feel the way that we do. Now, research here is also now exploring strong possibilities of chronic fatigue syndrome, right? So apart from my research, there's also wonderful other research that's been done on this. And that can also be triggered due to a pathogen infection, which can be viral, bacterial, fungal, and it can actually also now be due to parasites. It's very interesting research that has started to come forward. Now, a bacterial infection here seems to be really super high on the list as possible causes because of your gut leaking bacteria into your bloodstream. Now, that is also why bacterial DNA can be detected in your bloodstream. Now, this infection can actually spread into the bloodstream, which then spreads the infections throughout the whole body. So here also now it depends on the starting point of the infection, because that will clearly tell you the emotional, psychosomatic, and also psychological weaknesses and stress that a person has been feeling and been vulnerable to that cause aspects of the body to be depleted before this infection took place. Meaning, what was emotionally causing them so much emotional distress in their life at the time, which from my observation in many cases have been subconscious trauma resurfacing. Meaning, the person's ability to emotionally numb themselves to the environment has now increased to the extent where they are almost unable to fully grasp the severity of emotional impact that certain stressful circumstances in their life have on them. And also, so now consciously, they are unaware of the damage of their negative emotions and the impact that it's having on their physical body. However, in this case, the body is fully aware of the negative impact, meaning the emotional body, and also the physical long-term consequences of these subconscious activations. So let's move back to infections that I mentioned earlier, because this can spread to other parts of the body, and also to areas that would be most vulnerable would be areas where they've been storing a great deal of emotional stress in their body. And you can learn so much more about that from Volume 1. I have 679 medical ailments in that book that you can find on Amazon. Right? So and with these emotional root causes as well behind these ailments, which we all share universally. We all share it universally. And it's also, and the reason for that is because we store this emotional stress in the exact same areas in our body. When certain physical and psychological emotional thresholds are reached in a person's coping mechanisms and skills, which are normally unhealthy for them. And their stress and trauma can then trigger also ailments to start to surface in the body. Even scientists are finally starting to agree with this concept. So even when you just look at the symptoms here of CFS without even going into the long-term stress or the root causes, you can already see a very accurate storyline by dissecting the symptoms, right? By dissecting just the symptoms to show you the hidden psychosomatic emotional stress behind them, which in most cases will be universally the same for everyone suffering from chronic fatigue syndrome who have these issues as well. So in this case, we have the feeling of always feeling tired, or like a significant impairment of short-term memory or concentration. We have muscle pain. We have joint pain without swelling. There's also like a pattern of headaches. And then we have tender lymph nodes and also a recurring sore throat. Now, here I will briefly explain for you patterns of these built-up emotional stress in the body that can cause a person to become more vulnerable to attracting these conditions. Now, also in my Premium Healing Library course, which is on evetterosepremium.com, I will go to in a lot more detail about these symptoms and also have healing courses for this. But for now, research also shows that CFS occurs 4 times more frequently in women than in men. And here I will also explain a little bit later why that is the case. So let's start with the symptoms and break them down. Always feeling tired. So something in your past or your present life is calling you to step into a state of being and also behaving that is not in alignment with your natural personality. Another symptom that we have is short-term memory or concentration challenges. Here you might actually have a negative association with taking in information from your environment. Another symptom is muscle pain. Here it could be because you are tired of always having to be strong, having to, almost feeling like there's a part of you that have to always be rigid, right? A part of your personality wants to always be in control, but there's also a sense of rigidity that's not allowing you to really fully stretch to the point where you can be as in control as you want to be, which also sabotages support from coming into your life, reinforcing the feeling of lack of support, which makes you feel even the desire to be in control. It makes that desire and need even stronger. So you have a bit of a double-edged sword there with that scenario. Another one that we have is joint pain. And here you might feel like you are almost like the ham in the middle of stuck of a sandwich. Right? We've all been there, we know what that feels like. And here it could be because you feel conflicted between clashing views of people that you care about. Because the area of the joint pain will actually tell you exactly what emotion you are suppressing. We also have headaches. And here, if that's the case, it could be that you are feeling angry, right? You feel that you cannot control certain things in your life or the direction your life is heading into. We also have here tender lymph nodes. This could also mean that you feel perhaps under attack by people that you need love and support from. And now a sore throat is that you feel unable to express anger towards someone or to people, and you also feel silence and you feel suppressed by their opinions. Okay guys, so now let's move on to the emotional psychosomatic psychological stress that you might have been challenged with or struggling with if you have CFS. So here we have your adrenals. Your adrenals are working overtime and they are exhausted, locking you into a constant state of fight or flight, which means now that any energy that your body creates is immediately used by your body's survival system, meaning that the benefit of any rest that you're getting is very short-lived. And you also feel overwhelmed with your life, and also there could perhaps be a deep need to escape. So of course, it begs the question, what do you need to escape from? And the answer to this question will already reveal so many underlying stress factors that you consciously or subconsciously feel held back by. And you are still holding on to it and perhaps even investing energy into disappointments from the past. And your resentment might also serve to remind you that unresolved injustices just doesn't feel like they have any end to them. And also feeling that they need to be corrected one day. And that is also where you lose energy. Not knowing how to approach these circumstances, which now causes you, for example, not to want to face certain circumstances in your life anymore. And you often land yourself in stressful circumstances and pour your whole heart into it until you don't have any driving force left anymore. And it begs the question, why are you giving so much? What are you trying to compensate for? Right? You also do not exercise healthy boundaries, either with yourself or with others. And you use now, as a result, you use your fatigue as a way to express boundaries, especially when saying no to people's demands is hard for you. Right? So being tired always allows you to turn others down without dealing with confrontation from them, because you are a people pleaser. And you often get yourself overbooked with obligations as well. And this leaves you feeling drained and resentful as you just give and give and give without any consideration for your own needs. You also could have been part of a family where a great deal of control and dominance were projected towards you with the intention of controlling and manipulating your life. Now, as a result of this, know that also influential people should never be able to challenge or question, for example, how you feel. But you gave them the power to do that. And you feel that you are losing your power in their presence. Now, you could also be attracting, for example, partners that resemble these dominant figures from your past. And you also perhaps tend to keep recreating circumstances that make you feel the way that influential people or a person did in your childhood. And so this often relates to feeling intimidated, feeling scared, feeling controlled, and feeling suffocated. And your efforts also never feel good enough, causing you now to also, for example, do things over and over again without receiving any payoff for your efforts. Here you have also invested a great amount of time in attending to other people's needs. That's now depleting your own energetic resources. And you are perhaps also here searching for acknowledgement from a person who regularly rejects and also devalues you. And you often feel that you already failed your goal even before you started it. Right? So there's a huge self-sabotaging aspect of like, why even try? I don't have support. I don't have acknowledgement. I don't have the power in me because my power is with someone else. So the more you try, the more you fail. And this pattern is only feeding your low self-esteem and guilt and shame of not feeling important enough. And also in an effort to please others, you ignore the pursuit of your own passion and goals. So here other people's passions have become your passion. And you're also now trying too hard to control circumstances that are out of your control. And you try to control it because it makes you feel safe. However, the control that you feel is an illusion, right? It's an action toward the intended goal that gives you a feeling of being in control. Whereas your circumstances might actually show you different results, and the power struggle has also taken a toll on you emotionally and mentally and spiritually. Here you also seem to be stuck in a state of anxiety and stress as well. And this may be a result of being part of a family where success and your ability to please others would determine how much love and attention you received. Now, I have also seen CFS surfacing just as a person is about to make a big breakthrough in their career or to step into a new phase of their life. Take note, right? There's a great fear of change, of success. And fatigue often kicks in when you're feeling scared and lacking confidence to step into a new direction. And the fatigue could be a subconscious way of avoiding change. So guys, there you go. A brief explanation of chronic fatigue syndrome. And also remember to subscribe to Evette Rose Premium to be notified when the premium site Healing Library is live, if not already. So keep asking these really great questions. And thank you for joining me today. And until next time, be the light that you are. Hi guys, thank you for joining me, and remember to grab your copy of Metaphysical Anatomy on Amazon, 679 medical ailments. And I also wrote about the psychosomatic root causes of that, and I'm spoiling it because I even added key points for you to start looking at important questions that you can ask yourself to start improving your quality of life. And also remember to catch me on Instagram, Evette Rose, 1 with the digit 1, and Metaphysical Anatomy on our Facebook fan page. Bye guys!